What's going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. So, guys, this topic that we're about to talk about, it's a very touchy subject for a lot of Colts fans, including myself. And, some people still have some mixed emotions about this situation I'm about to talk about, and, including me. So I'm right here with you guys. But today we heard for the first time someone got a actual interview with former Indianapolis Colt quarterback Andrew Luck. Shout out to Seth Wickersham, ESPN senior writer. He was on the ESPN Daily Show on Spotify, and he wrote an article today about visiting Andrew Luck. He made a post today saying, "I visited Andrew Luck many times this year as he broke his silence, searching for deeper reasons for his retirement, a decision that liberated and haunts him, and considers a return to football, but not how so many hope." So, before I even go into any detail on this, if you guys want to go check out the article that's on ESPN, if you look up Seth Wickersham on Twitter, he has a link to it in his on a pinned tweet for him. And if you wanted to listen to the audio version, just go on Spotify, go to ESPN Daily. It will have it there. So a lot of us know how Andrew Luck ended up retiring back in 2019, right before the 2019 season, in a way that was very unprecedented and a way that nobody saw coming, and not even a lot of people in the building. So we just go ahead and kind of dive into it a little bit. And again, guys, I'm not going to go word for word on everything that was said, but I'm going to kind of just go over the gist of it. So I'm going to kind of start all the way back to where it is in 2015. 2015 is when the first set of injury woes started happening for Andrew Luck. He started having the issues of self-doubt and self-infliction when it comes to his identity and who he was trying to become as a quarterback. And ultimately, Andrew Luck shared that the biggest reason for, him retiring was due to the fact that he no longer wanted to be involved in a process of rehab, injury, rehab, injury, rehab, injury. It kept happening so many times through the last 4 years of his career that he said he did not want to participate in that any longer. So that is why he ultimately wanted to leave for other multitude of reasons, which we'll talk about here. But the biggest news of it was coming at about 2016, the end of the 2016 season, when Andrew Luck had to sit out the rest of the year with a torn up shoulder, throwing shoulder, and a lacerated kidney. Now, the problem was when it came to Andrew Luck is while everyone in the Colts building felt that Andrew Luck was making great progress in his rehabilitation to coming back onto the field in the 2017 season, Andrew Luck was the only person who knew truly how he was feeling, and that it was the exact opposite. The rehab was not going well for Andrew Luck, and that was not later found out until very close to the 2017 season, and he had to eventually come clean about it. There was even a report that he talked about how in the preseason game for the Colts versus the Packers, he said that the game was canceled due to turf conditions. And on the inside, Andrew Luck stated he was extremely relieved because he did not want to have to warm up. He did not want to have to prove to people that he just wasn't ready when Irsay was going out and saying that he's going to be ready for when the season happens. Sure enough, Andrew Luck was not close. So Eventually, they had the issue of, Andrew Luck had this major injury in his shoulder, and it was hurting him severely, and he was having difficulty figuring out who he wanted to go to trust for an opinion on this shoulder, because he wanted to visit his old Stanford trainer. That didn't work. Indy trainers, nothing was working. Everything just felt the same. So that was when Andrew Luck decided to go to Europe with him and his wife, Nicole, to Holland in Europe in order to be able to actually meet with someone that was going to give them an idea of what's going on. And in the story, they talk about how Andrew Luck gets there, and, the doctor that was treating him was asking him these almost like therapy questions for what he wanted else in life. He says, "What are you?" And he repeatedly, mentioned that, I don't know, but I feel like I'm a football player. And, they were talking about how Andrew Luck repeatedly mentioned, "I have to throw, doc. I mean, I have to throw. I have to be ready." And he kept repeatedly saying, "No, you're not ready. I mean, you're not ready. You're not going to be ready to throw for any time soon." And, ended up, going down a spiral of, kept saying, I'm a football player. I need to throw. I need to throw. It was becoming his self-identity that all he was a football player, and that he needed to throw at all costs. That there was no other option for him. He had to, be a football player. And they talk about this in the audio version of this. He was talking about how, Andrew Luck, when he came out of school, everyone knew how smart he was. Everyone talked about how, he could have been a politician, could have been a scientist, could have been an architect, could have been a lot of different things. But no, he chose football as what he felt he needed to do. And it became his self-identity to a point where he felt like that was all he was a football player, not a, dedicated, husband, not a soon-to-be father, even though this was before, he found out he was having a child. But that was what he felt his identity was being a quarterback and nothing else. And I don't know if a lot of people will quite understand what that means when, your self-identity tells you a lot of times, and I can give this perspective to a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of the men that watch this show will probably understand this, is oftentimes we talk about ourselves as what we do in our line of work. Like, for guys that, are electricians, plumbers, engineers, things like that, that is what we perceive ourselves as. Not much else, just what we do for work. That's how we get defined, or how we often define ourselves. And that is what Andrew Luck felt as a football player, was that he felt he was a quarterback and he needed to be a quarterback. And there was no other option, and that it was time to, he needed to be what needed to be done, right? He didn't want to fail at it. He didn't want to show emotion. He didn't want to show anything to suggest otherwise. And that's why I take issue with some of the people who, maybe you have this opinion of Andrew Luck now, who are watching this, that he quit on the team, that, he never cared about football, things of that nature. Folks, in this documentary, he literally says, that was all I knew how to do. That was all I felt I was a quarterback. So for you to sit there and say that, he never cared about football, that was his identity for most of the years that he played with the Indianapolis Colts. So the fact that I hope that some people will look at this and say, this guy was all about football at one point in his career, for most of his career. That was his mindset on this. And of course, the injury thing, I'm not going to talk with people about that. The injury thing, if you can't understand what the injuries were or how hard it is to go through rehab so many times in a couple years, then I don't suggest you try it because it's not good. But anyway, so after, having this issue with this self-identity, he even talked about how, his wife, Nicole, threatened to, gave him the ultimatum that she would potentially leave him if he did not figure it out. That, his identity, he is more than a football player. And that was one of the more difficult parts for Andrew Luck when they went to Europe and then had this counseling, had this therapy, was him finding out or trying to find out about himself that he was more than just a quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. He has more to his life than just being an NFL quarterback. That was the hardest part for him, but he started to finally figure that out. So after several months of rest and healing, the shoulder got a whole lot better, and he felt really great. And then in 2018, we saw Andrew Luck come back and play one of his best seasons of his career. In 2018, was named Comeback Player of the Year. Most had him as a top 3 quarterback in the league. It felt like there was no end in sight for what Indianapolis was about to do with Andrew Luck now back at the helm. Sure, come to find out that throughout the entire 2018 season, he was playing with a bad ankle. And it got worse and worse as the season went on. But it didn't bother Andrew Luck as much, but he chose to ignore it because the whole idea of I wasn't going to let it control me because I wanted to show no fear. I wanted to prove that I could still do this. And then, of course, he thought it would get better. But even as the offseason went on, it did not get better. It continued to get worse. And they didn't know what to do. So Andrew Luck made up in his mind from writing it down, talking with Nicole, things of that nature. Apparently he even talked about the decision that he had made from I believe they said it was a wife's birthday party, and some friends were over and he might have said some things. And I think that might have been how the report got leaked to Adam Schefter in the first place. Again, I'm speculating here. I'm not 100% sure, but that was in the report. And, Ballard at one point asked Andrew Luck, when are you going to turn it on? And he stated, I'm not. And it was through this. He talked with the owner, Jim Irsay, talked with the GM, Chris Ballard, and the then head coach, Frank Reich, and said, I'm not returning. I don't want to do this anymore. And after them trying to talk him out of it and still no success, they decided they were going to, say it on the Sunday afternoon after the Colts' third preseason game against the Chicago Bears. Unfortunately, that moment never happened. Obviously, Schefter got a hold of the report ahead of time from somebody that Andrew Luck was going to be retiring early. And while on the sidelines with his team, he was forced to live with the decision and it coming out the way that it did, and then had to deliver a speech in that regard. Again, guys, a bunch of other things that happened during that span, during before that as well. But as I mentioned, the self-identity was the big thing there. And he mentioned that, he said that, well, and on top of it, they stated that, he only lives about 5 minutes away from the Indianapolis Colts practice facility. He practically drives by it almost every day. He says that, he's developed a lot more clarity now with things going about and how things went down. He said the first night and the first afternoon after he had announced that decision, He was filled with tears. He was full of emotion and, a lot of grief that followed. But then on top of it, after a little while, became overwhelmed with, relief. He felt like it was actually the right decision that he had made for the first time throughout his professional career, that he felt like he was finally taking control of the situation that was going in front of him and that he had a decision to make. He did not like the person he was becoming. He did not like the fact that he felt his entire identity was all being a football player while he had a wife to take care of, a child on the way, and dealing with all of this. He felt he needed to make a change to be there for people that mattered. And so as of today, he is a, stay-at-home dad. He is taking care of his daughter all the time, have another child along the way. And, he's having a much more suitable life now. And then a couple more things before I end this video. I know a lot of people back in 2021, when Andrew Luck went to a football practice for a high school team in Colorado where he was skiing at the time, he went and talked with a couple of high school kids at a practice. And I know a lot of people mentioned, was Andrew Luck ready for a comeback? No, that was just that. But he was asked the question of, what was your biggest regret from your football career? And Andrew Luck, while on the inside was angry and upset at the fact that he got asked that question, because he truly didn't want to answer it, he did give an honest answer. And he mentioned that my biggest regret was retiring when I did. And he elaborated, stating, if I were to go back and redo it, knowing what I know now about my identity and how things were going to go, I would have retired the day after we lost to Kansas City. He mentioned how, you had a great season. You lost in the playoffs to the Kansas City Chiefs. He said, I wanted to prove to myself and to other people that I could play football still. And I proved that. And I wish I would have went back in there and said, hey guys, listen, I gave it all I had. I'm just not dealing with this anymore. I just can't handle it. I'm leaving now. And he felt like it would have saved himself and a lot of other people the heartbreak going into that season, because obviously, like I said, at that time, he was struggling with the identity of knowing himself as a quarterback, not taking into account his other feelings and what was going on in his head. So that was the issue, right? So like I said, guys, this has been water under the bridge now for about 3 seasons now. The Colts are looking to move on. Andrew Luck has moved on. He says that every day, it's still a process of wishing that things would have ended differently than what they did, but it is where we are at now. I will just say this to end this, because I know a lot of people, are like, still wanting to know about Andrew. And some people are even mad at the fact that, why all of a sudden now are we getting this news? What is going on here? Well, I just want to look at it and say, Andrew Luck does not owe anyone anything. And that we've said that for so long. And I think it's important that we say it again. And no one on planet Earth, this accounts for media, this accounts for Colts people, this talks for fans, everything. Andrew Luck does not owe you anything. He did not owe you an explanation then. He does not owe you an explanation now. Why he decided to share this with Seth Wickersham of all people, I don't know. That's not my problem. And it's nobody's problem. He decided to share it now and just leave it at that. So at the end of the day, an unfortunate event that has cost the Indianapolis Colts one of the generation's best quarterbacks. It really sucks that we didn't get to see more of this, but I am happy for Andrew Luck that he is happily retired and, being a stay-at-home dad, being with his family, being more interactive now with everything. And like I said, guys, if you want to watch, if you want to listen to the audio version on Spotify, go to ESPN Radio or ESPN Daily and do that, or go on ESPN.com and check out the article that was posted. But thank you guys again so much for the support. Let me know your guys' thoughts on this. And as always, go Colts.